Welcome back to the Mind Change Podcast. I'm your host, Heather McKean, and today we are covering our first condition in our emotional driver series, and that's fibromyalgia. So this is one of the diseases that I was personally diagnosed with, so I have a little bit more information with this one. Fibromyalgia is a disorder characterized by widespread musculoskeletal pain, and it can be accompanied by fatigue, sleep, memory, and mood issues. It's a condition that's still relatively mysterious to medical researchers. And what does seem to be obvious, though, is that the answer lies in the brain. So Dr. Benjamin Abraham, and an expert in fibromyalgia, and he's out of the Cleveland Clinic, he says that people with a fibromyalgia diagnosis seem to have a pain sensing system that's out of whack. They have a bigger than normal reaction to painful sensations, and they often feel pain in response to various sensations, even like heat and cold, that other people don't find painful at all. In my personal experience, fibromyalgia is usually a second or third line dis-ease response in the body. So what that means is that it usually isn't the first diagnosis or syndrome that a person is diagnosed with. And that's because the emotional components behind this particular disease are a buildup of various beliefs and emotions. In the mind change work, we are always after core beliefs that help support and underpin these diseases. So a few of the core beliefs that I have found that contribute to fibromyalgia are, number one, not good enough. And number two, that you have to earn love or worth or value or acceptance. And number three is, I have to be responsible. So fibromyalgia is generally characterized by pain. And in truth, the pain that the body is feeling is the result of emotional pain, usually from childhood and possibly passed down in the ancestral line, that has not been properly resolved or addressed in the body. So the pain in the body is a way to suppress or cope with the buildup of emotions that are not safe enough to share or process with our current tools. So one of the most difficult things about fibromyalgia is that it's a coping mechanism to deal with the emotional pain that seems too big to deal with. Yet, it's the emotional pain that's the key to healing the physical pain. Because the subconscious mind uses this as a way to protect and keep safe, it actually serves the individual to be reluctant to let go of the situations or injustices that are perpetuating the fibromyalgia. So these individuals may have had to grow up too soon, right? They may have had to deal with a great deal of emotional or physical responsibility at a young age. They may have also had to experience some sort of abuse. And that often occurs somewhere close within the social circle. So that could be in the family unit, but it could also be at school or at church. So these people will often feel disempowered, but very resentful about that fact. They feel victimized or feel that life is hard at every turn or that there's too much to do, but they do not have the resources to do it. In their adult life, they usually have attracted very similar situations to their childhood situations. So that leaves them feeling stuck or controlled, overwhelmed, overburdened. So the fibromyalgia gives them a legitimate reason for not being able to attend to the mounting needs that are around them. They also feel like it helps them to avoid the criticism and judgment that they so deeply fear. So essentially what this does is it causes a dissociation of the body. So that's the feeling that my body is against me, kind of like the rest of the world, right? The belief and experience that life is hard or that it's this hard fight becomes very personal and even becomes the fight inside their own body. Now, because I lived with fibromyalgia for many years before dealing with my past and my core beliefs through the mind change method, I did a little bit more research into this condition when writing my book. And so I reference a few of the studies that I researched in the book, the Mind Change book. So fibromyalgia is the body's way of making us more sensitive to pain so that we will become better at avoiding it, right? The belief is that if we could have foreseen the pain coming, then we would have been better prepared to deal with it. So we protect and perceive people, situations, or even the world as dangerous. As a child, that would have served us well in situations where we could not get away from emotional pain. But as an adult, it doesn't serve us any longer to be hyper-reactive to painful situations as a way of avoiding or coping. So like many things, this doesn't really seem to make sense to our conscious mind, right? Like, why would I want to be hypersensitive or hyper-reactive to painful situations when I've already dealt with so much pain? But that's the way that our conscious mind deals with it. The subconscious mind says, there's been so much pain and we need to figure out a way to not keep having so much pain. So we increase the painful situations or the awareness of pain as a way of saying, okay, we need to start looking out for it more. But unfortunately, especially with our reticular activating system, what we look for, we get more of. And so it really becomes a vicious cycle. And oftentimes people who have fibromyalgia or are doing fibromyalgia, they really do have so many areas that they can go back to and feel like, and legitimately feel like they were a victim of. They were a victim of their childhood, or they were a victim of their work environment, or they were a victim of a relationship issue or relationship issues within friend circles, or even in work, environments with bosses or coworkers. So oftentimes they will feel, and that's very common when you get into people with fibromyalgia. This was me, by the way. I felt very victimized. I felt like I had been a victim of my childhood. And then I could see, if I could track back, I was like, oh, and this bad thing happened, and these people took advantage of me, and this was bad. And it's really that lens of seeing the world as painful and dangerous that actually wrapped me back up into it. So as you become more aware of looking for that, then we don't realize that we are setting our signals for or our filters for those things. So we end up finding those situations even more. And the body is for us. It is trying to let us know that there are all these painful things that we're holding on to. And almost the message from the body is, we have enough pain in here, don't put any more in. And so that's where that hypersensitivity comes from. And it becomes very real. They're testing in the spinal fluid of fibromyalgia patients. You will see more pain receptors. That means there's more opportunities to feel pain. But the beautiful thing about this work is that if our body can create more pain receptors, it can also create more pleasure receptors. And if those pain receptors are not being triggered all the time, our body's very efficient and effective, and it can degrade those and not use those as much anymore. So we can really set ourselves back to a normal awareness where we aren't feeling so much pain, primarily because we don't have as many receptors, but also because we're not finding ourselves in as many painful situations. We're reset to, our filters are reset to, and our mind is reset to start looking for the good and the power and all of the wonderful things, which then, again, it goes the same way. We find what we're looking for. So we will find more good and more safe relationships and safe environments to be a part of. and then our body starts wiring more for that. So the way out of this condition, as with most instances of dis-ease in the body, is by going inside the mind and inside our subconscious programming. And that is the way to rewire and rewrite and reprogram to something even better. When we go in and we rewire those painful early experiences, our body does not have to stay hypersensitive or hyperactive. So that means it doesn't have to create pain that we can handle to avoid the pain that we think we cannot. If you or someone you know is dealing with this condition, it's important to remember that the feelings, the manifestations of the disease are very real. So even though the pain is being created from our mind, the body absolutely feels it. And healing can feel scary because it involves letting go of the painful experiences that shaped us. When someone's world has oriented around pain, they tend to perceive any discomfort as pain. So change, as we all know, isn't always comfortable. In fact, it's often challenging at first. But with the proper tools, this condition can be totally reversed. I am personal proof of that. And we have many other clients now and people within the Mind Change community that are proof of that as well. So I look forward to seeing you next time. Please make sure to leave those 5-star reviews and comment on a disease, symptom, or ailment that you would like to hear us cover. Until next time, thanks for joining us on the Mind Change podcast, where we are changing the world one mind at a time.